It all begins in Norway, 1942. The evil Red Skull, who is the leader of Hydra, a Nazi science division, discovers an ancient relic called the Tesseract, a powerful source of energy. Red Skull plans to use it for world domination. Now, we're introduced to Steve Rogers, a young man in Brooklyn. Steve is skinny and weak, but has the heart of a lion. He wants to join the army to fight in World War II, but his frail body keeps getting him rejected. He keeps trying, though, determined to serve his country. Steve's best friend, Bucky Barnes, is already in the army and supports Steve's efforts. One night, Steve and Bucky attend an exhibition of future technologies, where Steve sees another chance to enlist. Despite Bucky's concerns, Steve tries again. But this time, he catches the attention of Dr. Abraham Erskine, a German scientist working for the U.S. government. Dr. Erskine sees something special in Steve, his courage and determination, and decides to give him a shot. Steve is recruited for a top-secret military experiment called Project Rebirth. At the training camp, we meet Peggy Carter, a British agent, and Colonel Phillips, who oversees the project. Peggy notices Steve's bravery and intelligence, even though he isn't physically impressive. During training, the soldiers are tested, and Steve continues to impress them with his heart. In one test, Colonel Phillips throws a dummy grenade to see how the soldiers react. Everyone runs for cover, but Steve jumps on the grenade to shield others, even though he thinks it's real. This selfless act convinces everyone that Steve is the right man for the experiment. The experiment day arrives. Steve is injected with a serum that enhances his body, turning him into a super soldier. He grows taller, stronger, and more muscular instantly. The transformation is a success. But before the team can celebrate, a Hydra agent infiltrates the lab and kills Dr. Erskine, the only person who knows the secret of the serum. The Hydra agent escapes, but not before Steve chases him down, showcasing his new superhuman speed and agility. Unfortunately, the agent kills himself before Steve can get any information. With Dr. Erskine gone, Steve becomes the only super soldier. However, instead of sending him to the front lines, the government uses Steve as a propaganda tool to raise war bonds. They dress him up in a colorful costume, calling him Captain America, and have him perform in shows to boost morale. Steve feels humiliated, knowing he can do more than just sell war bonds. While performing for troops in Italy, Steve learns that Bucky's unit has been captured by Hydra. Against orders, Steve goes on a solo mission to rescue them. Peggy and Howard Stark, a brilliant inventor and Tony Stark's father, help him by flying him behind enemy lines. Armed with only a shield and his determination, Steve infiltrates the Hydra base and frees the prisoners, including Bucky. During the rescue, Steve confronts Red Skull, who reveals his own super soldier serum-enhanced strength. However, Red Skull's serum had adverse effects, disfiguring him and giving him a horrifying red face. Red Skull escapes, but Steve's daring rescue earns him the respect of his peers and the higher-ups in the military. Steve forms a special team, called the Howling Commandos, to take down Hydra's operations one by one. Together, they fight Hydra forces across Europe, growing closer and more skilled with every mission. Steve also gets a new, iconic shield made from vibranium, a rare metal that can absorb vibrations. As Steve and his team keep pushing Hydra back, they uncover Red Skull's plan to use the Tesseract to power devastating weapons. The war against Hydra intensifies, but things take a tragic turn when Steve and Bucky go on a mission to stop a Hydra train. During the battle, Bucky falls from the train into a snowy ravine, seemingly to his death. Steve is devastated by the loss of his best friend, but knows he must continue the fight. The final confrontation comes when Steve learns that Red Skull plans to launch an attack on major U.S. cities using bombers loaded with Tesseract-powered weapons. Steve infiltrates Red Skull's base and confronts him on a massive plane carrying the bombs. The two engage in a fierce battle, but during the fight, Red Skull tries to harness the power of the Tesseract directly. However, the energy overwhelms him, and he is seemingly disintegrated, leaving the Tesseract behind. With Red Skull gone, Steve realizes that the plane is still heading for New York, and there's no way to safely land it without risking countless lives. In a heart-wrenching decision, Steve says goodbye to Peggy over the radio and crashes the plane into the Arctic, sacrificing himself to save millions. Peggy is heartbroken, as they had planned to have a dance after the war. Decades later, in the present day, Steve is discovered frozen in ice by a research team. Miraculously, he is still alive, having been preserved by the cold. When he wakes up, he's in a hospital room, but something feels off. Steve escapes the room and runs into Times Square, where he's shocked to see the modern world around him. Nick Fury, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., approaches him and gently tells him that he's been asleep for nearly 70 years. Steve's world has changed, but his mission isn't over. The movie ends with Steve still processing the fact that he's now in a completely different time, setting the stage for his next adventure.